Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word, jobs, J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
Jamie Glasov is with us. He is editor at Front Page Magazine. He holds a PhD in history with a specialty in Russian, U.S., and Canadian foreign policy. He's a classic underachiever, as you can tell. The author of Canadian Policy Towards Khrushchev's Soviet Union and is the co-editor with David Horowitz of The Hate America Left. His latest book, United in Hate, The Left's Romance with Tyranny and Terror. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show, Jamie Glasov. Good to have you, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Gina. It's an honor and a privilege.
You and I have more trouble getting on each other's shows than anyone else that I've ever had on the show or tried to be on their show. It's the funniest thing ever. We're just going to have to continue to make this happen. One of the things that you have taken a hard look at that means a lot to me personally, I've noticed this too, but you almost sound crazy when you say that the statists in this country and the jihadists are speaking in unison, singing the same song, and coming for our throats. Do I exaggerate?
No, you don't exaggerate at all. That's the experience of my entire life. When my family came from the Soviet Union, my parents battled the evil empire from the time I was 8, 9, 10 years old, being around leftists, myriads of them, hundreds and thousands of them, were always denying to me what my parents had experienced under the Soviet Union, and were always making excuses for communism during the Cold War because deep down in their hearts they supported the Soviet Union in the Cold War. Now with the collapse of communism, they're continuing their romance with tyranny and terror because the left wants to break down our society, Dr. Gina. They reach their hands out in solidarity to the enemy, always, and that's why Barack Obama is weeping and sobbing at the minute that Morsi has fallen in Egypt.
So when you say this, what tangible evidence, if we're to look at this, just the facts and nothing but the facts, what tangible evidence do you know of that this administration and other statists like it are united with the jihadists and working together for the demise of this country?
Well, where do we even start? Mm-hmm. Let's just begin with what's happening right now, right in front of us. Mm-hmm. I recommend to everybody to go get Frank Gaffney's pamphlet, The Muslim Brotherhood in the Obama Administration. Dr. Gina, are you impressed that I'm not even promoting my own book?
I promoted your book. I'll take care of that.
Okay. So, Frank Gaffney, The Muslim Brotherhood in the Obama Administration. It's a pamphlet available at frontpagemag.com. Look, the Obama administration has allowed the Muslim Brotherhood to penetrate this administration. Mohammed Ali Biari, so many figures. And this is a tragedy, and it's all interlinked with the fact, if you want evidence, let's even look at the larger picture. Iranian students out in the streets in 2009 trying to overthrow the mullahs there. Obama abandons them because that's not in the interests of destroying the United States and hurting U.S. security. It would have been in America's favor and interest to have that regime overthrown. So Obama steps back. But when Egyptians stand in the streets to overthrow Mubarak, Obama, of course, tells Mubarak he has to go because it's in the interests of anti-American interests for the enemies of the United States to take power. Now that Morsi has been overthrown, the Muslim Brotherhood has been overthrown, an enemy of the United States and Israel, Obama is working as hard as he can to have him put back in power. All of these things connect, Gina. This has been the left's behavior throughout the entire Cold War. But the scary thing now is that when I was a kid, I would come home so angry because of what the professors were saying, because of what the artsy-fartsy people were saying in all these communities. This dangerous thing now, it's not just a professor in university. They are in power, and the media is doing the job for them.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. One thing I did, I write for WorldNet Daily, as you know, and I took a look at the geography of the basically the Islamic expansion and the times where Obama's just kind of turned his head and ignored things that were going on or played dumb, that kind of thing. When you look at the geography, I know you've noticed this too, and you start putting things together, tell us what we're really looking at in terms of expansion.
Well, of course, I mean, one of the very scary thing is, just to begin with, is what the quote-unquote Arab Spring is yielding. We have the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamists taking over the Middle East. You know, why was Gaddafi overthrown? Yes, he was an SOB, but he was not harming the interests, the national security interests of the United States. Now that Obama went in and got rid of him, Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood all coming to power. In Egypt, yes, there's a war there now between these factions, but the United States is on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood. And we see, even demographically, and everything that's happening in Europe, in England, in France, we see an Islamization occurring throughout the world. And it's even happening on our own territory, Dr. Gina. I mean, look, there's honor kill, even to begin with, look at the honor killing skyrocketing in America. And we are, not one word is being said. I'm waiting for Barack Obama to talk about Aqsa Parvez, or a young Muslim girl that was butchered by her family, and I'm waiting for him to say that could have been my daughter. But he's not standing up for the victims of jihad. And even look, for instance, at the Boston Marathon massacre. Very interesting that they gave the Miranda rights as quick as they could to Johar Tsarnaev, because it is not in the interest of Eric Holder and this administration for the truth to be told about jihad and its plots towards the United States. You see, because if the truth is told, then we have to admit that our society is superior and is worth defending and protecting. That's the key. The left wants to destroy and transform the United States of America. That's even Barack Obama talking about it. He's transforming it. He's building a new one.
Right.
In order to build the new one, you have to destroy the one that you want to build. You want to build on the ashes of the one that you want to destroy. So by admitting that there is an evil adversary, you're going to weaken that destructive effort.
Absolutely. And this president, you know, he campaigned on a promise to make the world hate the U.S. less. But now we're pretty much openly mocked in the streets across the Middle East. Isn't that true?
Absolutely right, Dr. Gina. You're hitting the nail right on the head, because, look, I don't even believe that that's what he really wanted, but his argument was, you know, he's just going to go to Cairo and just tell all the Muslims how much he loves the call to prayer, and he's this and that, and they're all going to love him. And you're absolutely right. That's why there was the cover-up in Benghazi, because the narrative is not working. That's why they're trying to shut up Tsarnaev, because that narrative's not working. They're hating us more and more and more, because totalitarian terrorist entities only understand strength. And I know this very well from coming from the Soviet Union. Putin and the KGB, they're just laughing at Obama. They don't even respect him, and they have more contempt for him. Because when you show weakness to the KGB, when you show weakness to jihadists, they don't start wanting to embrace you more. They're just calculating more on how to further destroy you. Every sign of weakness to these people, every accommodation to these kind of people and entities only leads to their disrespect and their contempt. And you're exactly right. There is complete contempt and even more hatred towards the United States now. So these leftists, it's just, I'll tell you, we need one conference after the other, psychiatric conferences. We need at least 20 to begin with on the mindset of the left.
And it really is so complicated to understand, but tell us this, catch us up for one thing on what is really happening in Egypt, where we really are, and how folks can best explain that in the simplest terms when they're at the grocery store, when they're at the post office, when they're at their kids' school. Give us some talking points.
Well, look, one thing is for sure, that the Obama administration was on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood that took over in Egypt. This is Sharia. This is jihad. They came to power, and this is a huge enemy of Israel, huge enemy of the United States. Now, what's very complicated in Egypt is that the anti-Morsi forces, there are secular forces. This is in our interest that Morsi fell. But we have to remember, Nani Darwish always stresses this theme, a very important person to listen to. When she points at the demonstrations in the Middle East, even in Egypt, she asks, where are the signs that say separation of mosque and state? Where are the signs that say down with Sharia? Dr. Gina, these signs do not exist, and we have to remember that people power in certain environments, especially, let's say, in the environments where people believe in Mein Kampf, or in environments where people believe in the Quran, that we have to be very careful with those movements. So in Egypt, it's, on the one hand, it's a very good development that the Muslim Brotherhood was overthrown, because it's a setback and it may empower secular forces, but at the same time, we have to be very cautious with who we support, because unfortunately in those environments, it is only military strength that can really stop the greater evil.
And they, of course, will say that this is everything you're afraid of right there, Jamie. All the things you just said. This is religious zealousness. This is precisely why we need to take God out of the pledge. We need to take him out of the schools. Heck, we probably should even take him out of the churches. They're going to make that argument based upon the set of facts you just laid out. Why is that flawed?
Well, first of all, there's a great hypocrisy there. Let's even begin at the start. I remember going to school with all the graduate students and the professors, and during Easter time, I remember one particular person would come into the faculty lounge and say, I'm going to have a crucifixion party. And they made these jokes about Christianity and made fun of Jesus Christ, and they wanted prayers out of the schools, and they had contempt for Southern evangelicals, wanted that all out of society, wanted it all out of the schools. And all of a sudden today, children in schools are being asked to come in wearing burqas and veils. And they have separate rooms to pray and mosque and all this stuff. We know all this stuff is happening. That's a symbol, that's a metaphor of what's happening on the larger level. So first of all, it's a complete lie that they're against religion. They're actually against the Judeo-Christian tradition, because it is at the buffer of our society. It's what holds our society together. The way that they turn a blind eye and support Islam shows that it's all hypocrisy. Now, the second part to your question, Gina, now I say this as Jamie Glazoff, not necessarily representing the Freedom Center or Front Page, because we're multi-faith and multicultural, but I'll say for myself as Jamie Glazoff that I believe that this is very much a spiritual battle. I am a Christian, and for us to negate and deny the spiritual forces in the fight with evil, in my opinion, will really lead to our demise. We have to hold on to our faith and also battle for our faith when we're battling against enemies that are inspired by their religion, which in my opinion has very many destructive elements.
Is the answer a change to our Constitution, Jamie?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that question. It would begin with what you would be implying. What would you be implying in terms of changing the Constitution? Well, you mean in terms of how the bad guys want to change it, or the good things that you think could be added to it?
To stop the advancement of Sharia law and to stop the advancement of radical Islam in this country. What is the answer?
Oh, I see. Well, crucial question. Exactly. Now, this is the key, Dr. Gina, because you see, the left has built up a paradigm that has blindfolded us and tied our hands behind our back. You see, the utopian virus teaches all people are equal, all cultures are equal, all religions are equal. So, and you say one word against that, then you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, etc. So what happens is when the Tsarnaevs do the Boston Massacre, perpetrate the Boston Massacre, we have to be very careful. Was it the rap music? Was it the boxing career? Can't point to Islam, because if we point to Islam and start talking about Surah 9:5 and Surah 9:29 and how it says to kill the unbeliever, then it might mean that not all religions are equal, and we can't go there.
Right.
So let's look at the rap music and boxing, right?
Right.
So we have to break through that, and I'm very pessimistic because the left has such a hold on us that we can't break through that, but that's what we have to do. In the end, Dr. Gina, if we can have this scenario, and I can't picture it because the left has such a chokehold on us, we have to get to the point where we can say Western civilization is superior to many adversary cultures and religions, including Islam. We are superior to a society and a way of life that pushes 15 girls back into a burning building so they burn to death because they're not wearing their veils. We are superior. And we also have to get to this point where we can actually begin to say that Islam is not a religion but a political ideology. This is the key. Yeah, because what Islam does is it puts the window dressing up as if though it is a religion, and therefore it gets protection in America. And this gets back to what you're saying. We have to get to the point where we say, no, this is not just a religion like Buddhism or Taoism. This is supremacism of a certain political ideology, because this is a teaching. It's close to a cult teaching. It's a teaching, and all four schools of Islamic jurisprudence teach Islamic supremacism, that it is their duty to conquer the world. So we, in order to save ourselves, we also have to start being honest that Islam comes veiled as a religion, but it's actually a political ideology.
Absolutely. United in Hate is his book, The Left's Romance with Tyranny and Terror. You can find him on Twitter at Jamie Glazov, Glazov. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us. We got to have you on again, my friend. You're a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you.
And Dr. Gina, thank you for being so nice to me. I wish that more people were nice to me like you.
Well, you are one of the hottest conservatives. I happen to know. I happen to be a judge in that contest. So,
well, can we spend like another 10, 20 minutes just talking about
that? I've talked about it extensively. We'll have you back on again soon.
Okay,
thank you so much. Guns and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. DocGTV.com, DocGTV.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
It's good to hear your voice, and good that you are still out there doing what you do, because Americans, we are often surprised by polls. Tell us, going back, how long have you been doing this?
Well, I began polling full-time for my career in 1994, which means almost 20 years, and I actually did my first couple of polls back in the 80s when it was not yet a full-time profession.
So are you sometimes surprised by the results of your own polls?
Oh, of course. Sometimes the surprises are in the big numbers. Sometimes the surprises are in the details along the way. But if you don't have the curiosity to be asking about new questions and different things, that you shouldn't be in the business.
And so as you've watched the polls over the last just about 20 years, what is the most overall surprising trend to you?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think the thing that I talk about the most in my work that is a surprise to people I talk to, rather than necessarily a surprise to me, is consistently, repeatedly, the American people are the solution to our problems. They have good common sense wisdom, and and they're far more willing to make hard choices than political leaders. And that's just, I say that time and time again, and especially in Washington, they say you've got to be kidding.
Yeah, and I do see that all the time. I'll see your polls come out, and I'll talk about them on my show. And a lot of times those polls really don't surprise me because I feel like I'm kind of mainstream. I'm kind of a center-right conservative type who believes in God and country and the American way and the flag and whatever. And a lot of times I see that reflected in your polls, that's what most Americans believe. But the disconnect between Washington, D.C. and what just the common guy out there is experiencing in his daily life and his opinion about that is sometimes astonishing to me. What at this moment, Scott, what is the largest disconnect between your polls opinions and those you've polled and their opinions and the folks in Washington, D.C.? What are they just not catching on to in Washington, D.C. at this moment?
Well, on one issue, it is consistently on spending and fiscal policy issues. The American people are willing to support major reforms as long as they're thoughtful that will reduce spending, and people in Washington don't want to see anything cut. We saw that with the sequester battle. Right now, 35% of Americans say the country is heading in the right direction. That doesn't sound great, but it's up 7 points since the sequester went through. And people in Washington said when that went through, everything would be a problem.
Right.
A different issue where there's a big gap right now was immigration. On that, most Americans do want to see some kind of comprehensive reform that lets people who cross the border illegally but otherwise became a productive resident stay in this country. But they want to do that only if the border is secured first. In Washington, they ignore that part of it. And what amazes me is they don't seem to understand that nobody trusts them. Only 9% of voters think the federal government is going to try to enforce the border if some kind of reform is passed.
It's funny. I just talked about that exact topic on Cavuto, I think on Monday or Tuesday, and I can't believe that I'm not even seeing Republicans fighting for securing the borders, because you do, in your polling, I see all the time, that is a primary concern among people on the right and the left of this topic, correct?
That's correct. And again, I think you got to be careful with it. Sometimes people on the right sound hateful towards immigrants.
Right.
Nobody's mad at immigrants. They understand why you'd want to bring your family here. They understand why you'd want to seek out different opportunities. But they are mad at a system that doesn't even try to enforce the border. In fact, half of Americans think that federal policies encourage more illegal immigration. They'd rather see us perhaps going after the employers who knowingly hire illegal immigrants, those sorts of things. And the other big part of the story that Republicans, especially, and conservatives are bad at talking about, 2 out of 3 Americans do say that when it's done legally, immigration is good for America. This is seen as a positive thing. So yes, we do have a problem with the borders. We do have to figure out how to deal with that, but that doesn't mean people want to close down the borders and keep immigrants out.
All right, one other topic that has been obviously very paramount in our news, I've been doing a lot of talking about it as well, is, of course, the whole issue of Sandy Hook and gun control. What were the trends you saw immediately before, immediately after, and now regarding gun control in Sandy Hook?
Well, before the Sandy Hook disaster, about 40% of Americans thought we needed stricter gun control laws. That's up about 10 points. Since the disaster, and it's held fairly steady since then. I would expect it will be starting to decline in the next few months. But the storyline that we keep hearing is that there's this massive public call for something to be done. And look, people do want something done. That was a horrible event. Nobody wants to even think of having to go through something like that. But they don't see any of the solutions coming out of Washington as necessarily the right thing. For example, most Americans do support the idea of background checks, but most also say they will not reduce violence in America. They want them very limited, only to severe mental health problems or convicted felons. They don't want any kind of a registry kept. So there is a sense that the public is open to some very minor reforms, but they're not looking for, the mood has not changed dramatically the way people in Washington expected it would.
Now, we all know that President Obama was, of course, reelected. What is happening with his popularity among the average Joe out there? And especially, can you kind of, one of the things you can't do in just one poll is, can you kind of parallel that with what is happening economically and especially to jobs? Is that related to his popularity, or is he really just isolated from that, insulated?
Well, it's certainly the overall economic situation plays a role for any president. It's the most important issue out there. President Obama's job approval rating this morning in our poll is at 50%. For most of his first 3 years in office, he was at 47%. His numbers right now are trending down a little bit, and it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of this year he gets back to where he was for most of his first term. The economy has actually, been, at least consumer confidence has been improving over the last 3 months, and that has not been helping the president. So it's a little unclear as to what's going on with the connection there at this point in time.
And what about predictions? You've been doing this polling for 20 years. I don't know if you're willing or not, but I'd love to hear what you think. You just made, I guess, one prediction, but I'd love to hear what you think is going to happen over the next year and certainly over the rest of Obama's term. It'd be interesting to hear just what your thoughts are, having watched these political cycles over and over again from a statistical standpoint.
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are going to happen. One is frustration is going to continue to grow. Neither political party is talking in ways that make sense. They're talking about settling debating points rather than trying to solve problems. And Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals. I describe it sometimes like listening to a cell phone conversation. Somebody sitting next to you, you don't know them. It's really annoying to listen to half the conversation. Well, the politicians are talking only about the role of government rather than how to solve problems. And most Americans know there's a lot more to solving problems than just the public policy thing. So I think the frustration will increase. I think the second big story will be the president's health care law, whether it survives technically or not, is going to emerge much differently than anybody anticipated. The story I give, back in 1978, a benefits consultant found this provision in the IRS code called 401ks. It was never intended to create the retirement programs that it did, but he read the proposal, found it, and now 50 million people have 401ks.
All right.
I believe I know people are looking at the health care law, all those 2,000 pages, and they are going to find ways for people to have more choices than the president intended, and that will undo most of what the president's law was intended to accomplish.
Wow, interesting. I've not heard that anywhere else, Scott. That's really interesting. One last question for you. I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to tap this brain of yours. When I read some of your statistics that you're polling, and I think, where does he find the people? I went on Wife Swap. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there was kind of and the people out there who don't understand. Yeah, I went on the show Wife Swap. Sorry, and the people out there that don't understand the most fundamental aspects of politics astonish me. And it's most people, because they're watching reality TV, they're watching MTV. They're not reading Scott Rasmussen's polls. They're not listening to the Dr. Gina show, and they're not tuned into a lot of things. So when I see statistics like, here's one, 66% oppose Cyprus bailout plan to tax bank deposits, I just know you had to call 1,000 people to get one person that even knew what the heck you were talking about. Is that true?
There's a couple of issues in there. Number one, if you ask about a specific thing like that, you have to give them a little bit of background information, which can obviously impact any of the results. An issue like Cyprus, basically people know that something's going on in Europe. There's a lot of bailouts. And when they hear that somebody is taxing bank accounts, they don't like it. They're afraid the government here will try it, and they're unhappy with it. So if you interpret that to mean that people sit around and study the Cyprus plan and this is their considered thought, no, that's not the case. If you consider it as a gut reaction to what's happening, yes, it's good. And that's I think what you have to do with a lot of this. Most Americans pay attention to things that matter to them and that they can have some impact on. Most Americans, for example, don't know who their member of Congress is, but that's because they don't have any options. There's no reason for them to know who their member of Congress is. If they need help with something, they can Google them and find out from their constituent services person whatever help they need. But those are the sorts of details that don't matter. What I think is really interesting, people's instincts are sound And if we give them reasonable choices to make, they come up with reasonable decisions.
Well, Scott Rasmussen, you remain the prince of polls, and we sure do appreciate all the hard work that you do, keeping us informed of what is trending for those who are in the know. So thank you so much, Scott, for being with us today on the Dr. Gina Show.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you again soon.
All right, my friend, you take care now. Coming up
Right
next,
now, in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who would like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was founded over 35 years ago. Gun Owners of America is here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. Gun Owners of America has been called the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Join today at gunowners.org.
Do you support Obama's universal background check? This is Dr. Gina. I want you to go to gunowners.org right now and answer that important survey question. Gun Owners is the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, according to Ron Paul, and many others are finding the value of joining an organization like Gun Owners of America, who's been there and will be there with a no-compromise attitude. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org.
Hi, this is Joe Dan Gorman of Intellectual Frog Legs. Ain't no liberals say I have every phobia out there. They say I'm a homophobe, an Islamophobe, even a Michelle Obamophobe. Well, actually, I am kind of scared of her. So, you know, with all these fruitcake phobias, I'm bound to be on my last leg. So you probably ought to hurry on over to intellectualfroglegs.com. See what Chuck Woolery's calling the best new media he's seen. That's intellectualfroglegs.com.
This is Dick Morris. If you're diagnosed with liberalism, Dr. Gina will cure you.
Well, there are forgotten people, and there are unintended consequences. And whenever it is that you impose your concept of morality on a society, and you force laws based upon your own morality, you end up with unintended consequences and unintended victims. And that's precisely what has happened. I investigated, spent some time looking into this whole issue of the state of California saying that this Senate Bill 1172, a highly publicized law that says that therapists essentially cannot counsel children who don't want to be gay not to be gay. And that's essentially what it says. Some will call it conversion therapy. We're not talking about, some religious person going in and telling someone, I'm going to intervene and I'm going to help you convert from gay to ex-gay. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about people many times, victims of sexual predators, children, will go to their parents and say, I've been the victim of a sexual predator and I'm having confusion over my sexual identity. I don't really know. It is very normal and natural for victims of sexual predators, of pedophiles, to have some sexual identity confusion issues. That's very normal. In fact, it's almost straight across the board. You almost won't find someone victim of a pedophile who doesn't have some of that confusion because they've been sexually made aware when their brains are not developed enough to handle it. And we've talked about this too. I believe personally that younger and younger sex ed and younger sexual involvement will result in some of this confusion as well. But that's beside the point, because right now we're talking about victims of pedophiles who have gone in search of counseling who can't get it. So they're not only victimized there, they're also victimized when they go to school and maybe they've identified themselves as a reaction many times of rebellion against the abuse. They will identify themselves as gay. So they'll start dressing gay, whatever that means, talking gay, whatever that means, looking gay, whatever that means. I've spoken to these people that this has happened to. And they've confided in me. I was one who subscribed to the born gay thing, and I may still.
But I've had them tell me, no, I wasn't born gay. Don't call me that. I was gay as a reaction to sexual identity confusion. And when I started asking questions, I did or didn't receive counseling. If they received counseling, many times they come to terms with their sexual identity, be it gay or straight, but they get to it authentically through counseling and through therapy and through working through the process that has to take place when someone is abused. The state of California doesn't think that's important. The state of California doesn't care about those kids. So not only are those kids not receiving counseling, this is the real tragedy taking place. Those children who have been abused and are now being abused by the system that won't even let them get counseling are also abused when they turn away from the gay lifestyle in their schools. They are bullied by militant gay groups of teens or kids who think that it's so cool now. We have so flipped things. They think that it's so cool now to be gay that if you are ex-gay, you are very likely the most discriminated against child in the entire school. You are the victim of all the bullying. And guess what? There's nothing to protect you. Now, a couple of states do have anti-bullying laws for ex-gay teens. But most states don't. And most teachers don't even know what to do with this. What do? How do you punish the protected group? You punish the gay group who is bullying the ex-gay? And this gets very confusing. And where hate crimes are concerned and everything else, this gets very, very confusing. So there are groups of people taking this on. One of those is Matt Staver and his Liberty Council. We talked to David Pickup on Monday's show, I believe. He was violated by a pedophile when he was a child, and he says without therapists to help him through, he would have been convinced he was truly gay, but he is not. He is, of course, among this growing minority group who consider themselves ex-gay, and they have a lot to say about Governor Brown's presumption that anyone who has ever had gay feelings must assume they're gay and be denied access to anyone who might help them find their true identity as a homosexual or a heterosexual. How is that in and of itself not discrimination? And Pickup says that those who leave the gay lifestyle are subject to egregious discrimination and damage from different groups of people, much of it in their own schools, as we just discussed. The law is so broad that in order to help one group of children, it is absolutely creating a bullied group of another children who are doubly abused, triply abused, really, because a lot of times they're victims of a pedophile, then they're victims of a system that won't even let them get counseling, and then they're victims of bullies who believe they should stay gay or be gay to begin with. The harshest form of discrimination would be discrimination by those who are protected groups in this particular situation. But Ellen Kahn of the Human Rights Campaign says it's inappropriate to tell children that they have a choice. I firmly disagree with her. Funny how the statists can be so pro-choice on the one hand and so anti-choice on the other, isn't it? A child should not be forced to identify as gay merely because they experience some homosexual feelings. Some degree of homosexual feelings are natural, but especially natural from children of abuse, and especially natural in today's culture, where children are taught sex ed before their brains are really ready to understand it, and where children are experimenting sexually at ages younger and younger when their brains are not ready to handle it. It's perfectly normal for those people in that situation to experience homosexual feelings, but it doesn't always mean they're gay. So Staver's Liberty Council filed a petition yesterday with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals asking them to rehear Pickup versus Brown. And we, the Dr. Gina Show, will keep you posted on that. Stay tuned every day to the Dr. Gina Show, where we will bring you
Stuff you won't find anyplace else, because that's what we do, and we enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in today. You go boldly now and live the truth. God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com. docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who would like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hi, this is Mark Stein, author of After America, and even in the midst of total societal collapse, you don't want to miss the Dr. Gina Show. She's great.
Next guest, his name is David Pickup. That's one you will never forget. And I was laughing at him because he's finishing his PhD, and he tells me he's going to be Dr. Pickup. I said, you can't really say that with a straight face.
Pickup doctor.
The pickup doctor. It just sounds terrible. Yeah. But he's all excited because he's getting his PhD, and then people are going to go around calling him, laughing when he introduces himself. What are you going to do with that?
Well,
I guess Mr. Pickup is just as bad.
You just roll with it.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, it's a great name because you don't forget it. Maybe he should go into radio. David Pickup, welcome to the Dr. Gina Show. I think that was the worst introduction I ever gave anyone. I just wanted you to know that up front. Sorry,
it was great. It was great. I appreciate it because I feel the same way. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it is great, and it's one that you certainly don't forget, and it makes the case easy to remember as well. And you are indeed the plaintiff in this gay conversion therapy ban case. Back us up here and tell us a little bit about what happened here. Of course, I know the history because I live in California, but not everybody listening knows the history. What happened here and how you got involved?
Well, I'm a licensed psychotherapist in California and Texas, and I'm also an authentic reparative therapist. I say authentic because there's a lot of junk out there that's not real effective. And then I have also clients who are minors. Well, some senator and Equality California, the authors of this bill called SB 1172, they figured that there was a lot of harm from people like me going around trying to coerce people into change and using things like electroshock therapy and aversion therapies and all this quackery that nobody who has any sense as a therapist does anything like that. Yeah. So they tried to prove harm that's being done to these children. And in my opinion, they're actually trying to further a homosexual agenda, and I understand why. But nevertheless, they created this bill, and Governor Brown signed it. And so Liberty Counsel, who is the legal entity that is bringing the lawsuit against the state, that's why the lawsuit is named Pickup, that's me, versus Brown, that's Governor Brown. So what this law does is it's not in effect yet, pending final decision by the courts, and we'll have to go to the Supreme Court if we need to. But this law specifically demands, quote, any therapy that seeks to reduce or eliminate homosexual feelings is banned. And so what that means is that you might remember the cases that's still in the news occasionally of Jerry Sandusky and his victims. What this means is that if little boys who get abused by pedophiles, all the way from minor abuse all the way up to rape and things like that, for whom homosexual feelings through homosexual stimulation do come up, they arise because of these experiences. I was one of those boys, not Sandusky's victims, but I was a guy who was abused as a little boy. Well, if I was still a minor, I couldn't walk in now into a therapist's office, usually crying in tears and feeling a lot of confusion. I could talk about therapy, but according to the law, I can't do anything, nor can my parents sign a release form, nor can the therapist do anything to facilitate actual change, in other words, reduction or elimination of homosexual feelings. So the law is so broad, in order to help one group of children, it's damaging psychologically the minds and hearts of other groups of little children. This is only one group of children that this law is damaging. And I sent this information personally to Governor Brown, and I've talked with Senator Lieu, the author of the law, and they knew this, and they still didn't do anything about it. They knowingly signed off on this bill, knowing that there were a group of children for whom they would be greatly damaged. I have, just so you know, I have one client, excuse me, not a client, but I had a guy who not too long ago turned 18, but he was not too long ago a minor, and he looked at me a few weeks ago crying in tears and said to me, if I hadn't had help from you, David, and learned about the origins of what homosexuality is for me, I would have committed suicide. And so, I mean, he said that in tears. I didn't solicit that comment. We were in a group setting, and he just looked at me and he said, I found your writings and whatever, and said, I would have committed suicide, but this fits for me, what you're doing. So the state is actually telling children they can't do something that they believe that for them applies directly. And it's the most egregious thing I've probably ever heard of as a therapist and as a human being.
I would say that if I were just playing along here and just looking at legal terms and trying to figure out how this should all look in our culture, I would say that you should have every right as a counselor to help someone who thinks they're gay and is confused and wants to be gay. I don't understand then how come it would be banned. How come this isn't discrimination if it is so that if this child who does not want to be gay but is having some feelings of confusion cannot be counseled to try not to be gay? This makes no sense to me at all. Why this isn't really state-sanctioned discrimination?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly our point. Now, there's a lot of other reasons why we're bringing that lawsuit against the state, because a lot of rights are being violated. Constitutional rights of free speech, client rights to self-determination in therapy. There's also a very important, highly constitutional religious issue, because many licensed therapists are practicing under the direct auspices of their churches, and so they can't practice their religion if they're licensed therapists, which many are, that try to help children like this. So then you've got a separation between church and state. We know it's evidently going to go. They're pushing so hard with the state and the liberal agenda. Evidently, it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, but who knows? We might win after all, even before that. We're certainly trying our best. Well, this is all based, Dr. Gina, on only really one thing. It's the belief that has permeated the society that for every human being, homosexuality is naturally inborn. This would not be an issue if there was enough evidence that's proof out there.
Thank you, Alfred
Kinsey. Not be an issue.
Right,
exactly.
Well, let me ask you, because we're so short on time, and I do want to get a couple questions in. Islamic tradition would obviously say that people should not be homosexual. Are you getting any help from Muslims out there who should want to be able to counsel their people the same direction that, say, a Christian or a traditional Jew would? Correct? Any help from the Muslims out there?
Well, in a sense. The problem is, and I don't mean to, I'm not making judgments against Islam at all, but they're so dead set and so afraid of homosexuality per se, they don't talk about it very much. Like a lot of churches, frankly, in the Christian realm today in America. And so individual Muslims, we do have as clients, and we're happy to help them, and they do get help. it doesn't come as a centralized effort per
Okay,
se, so
and-
far at least.
Okay, and one other question. I would think this would be an ACLU issue. I'm guessing you're not getting a lot of help from them either.
Not really. Not really. It's Liberty Counsel who are the big guns right now, and these are the guys who have won plenty of cases of
Yeah.
discrimination in the United States of late. You can look them up on the internet. Anybody can.
No,
But we're very
familiar,
happy
yeah.
to have them.
Yeah, and I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with Liberty Counsel. So ultimately, where does this stand, and when will we know more? Because these things are always hurry up and wait.
Yes, the next phase is this. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled not in our favor, so now the petition has been made to the entire Ninth Circuit Court. That's about, I think, 9 individuals. They will decide within the next month or two if they're going to hear the case. If they do, we'll wait on their decision. If they don't, Liberty Counsel and me and the other folks who are plaintiffs will petition the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court elects to hear the case, they'll probably, the projection is they'll hear it in March and decide in July.
All right. Well, we'll certainly be watching. Anything that folks can do who want to get involved in helping or even funding Liberty Counsel in this effort?
Yes, please. Just look up Liberty Counsel in any web browser and you'll find them. But I also want to suggest several entities that are directly in support. One is NARTH, NARTH.com. That's N as in Nancy, ARTH.com. That's the National Association for Therapy of Homosexuality. This is a scientific organization that backs up what they say with a lot of research and a lot of anecdotal evidence. There's also some marvelous stories of actual therapeutic change on voicesofchange.org, and that's actually spelled voices-of-change.org. So there's some really good sites for people to check that information. There's my website. I'll give a plug for myself. It's davidpickuplmst.com. And so those are a few websites that anyone can go to and find out a lot of information to find out and decide for themselves. You know, that's one of the egregious parts of this whole thing. The point is that a lot of people are not letting other people decide for themselves.
Yeah, that's
They're not
the big
even
thing.
giving out the opposite. Yeah, that's what's so egregious, actually. I don't mind if somebody disagrees with me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to, in a sense, I'm happy to disagree with a gay activist. He has that right, but I have rights too. And so
Oh,
be
David,
sure.
I'm so sorry. We're so out of
You know?
time. You can hear the music,
That's
too.
all right.
But I wanted to thank
That's all
you.
right.
And certainly also want to mention PFOX, the organization that brought this to my attention. We will be
Hi,
keeping up
I'm
with this
Ted
event.
Cruz, and this is the Freedom Minute. Recently, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke testified before Congress about Obamacare, and he said that employers are hiring part-time workers in order to avoid the mandate. This is one instance in which Bernanke is right. In fact, U.S. employers have added far more part-time employees this year, averaging 93,000 a month, than full-time workers, which are only averaging 22,000 a month. In addition, employers are forcing employees to work 29 hours a week or less. Today, we're approaching the last best chance to stop Obamacare, which is hurting the economy, and it is a disaster for working people and their families. Single moms, people struggling to climb the economic ladder, can't make ends meet working part-time. I'm helping lead the effort to defund Obamacare, and I urge you to join us. I'm Ted Cruz, and this is the Freedom Minute.
Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who would like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was founded over 35 years ago. Gun Owners of America is here for only 2 reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. Gun Owners of America has been called the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Join today at gunowners.org. Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident, she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
3-letter word. Jobs. J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
With me, the person who taught me that showering is bad. There's only one person who really knows that lesson as well as he knows it, and that is the one and only, the very funny Steven Cruiser. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show.
I've seen you in high def.
Yeah, it's I'm sorry about that. I can't prevent it all the time, but I can definitely prevent it on my own show. I like low def cameras, very low def cameras, and less lights are fine with me too. I just want a candle and a bubble bath.
You know what I find myself saying when I watch high def commercials a lot, you know, where they have pretty girls on them and everything?
Wow, she has a lot of hair on her face?
I find myself saying, oh, that's unfortunate a lot. You just see too much. I like when I'm watching sports in high def, yay, I love that. But then when you start to see people up close, you're right, there's just stuff you don't need to see.
No,
ever.
really. And sports in high def, and maybe like nature programs, not those kinds of nature programs, I know right where your mind went, but I'm talking about the ones where you're like looking at pretty scenery. Like I know, Joe Dane will hate me for this, but that CBS on Sunday mornings, you know where they do that little, it's been on forever, what's his name, is it Charles Corral, or I don't know. Anyway, I love that show, and actually my husband will wake me with that and coffee because he'll put on my little show that I love where they show like something that you just never bothered to watch, like a flower blooming or just something stupid like that. That is good for high def, but leave it off of the faces, right?
Yes. There's just nobody. There's people. Ugh.
No, yeah, we don't need to know that. Okay, so you have a new ebook. Advising people not to let their little lefties shower. I think this is such a brilliant concept. Only you, Cruiser, would write a book about why people shouldn't shower. Do tell.
It's called Don't Let Hippies Shower because the hippies, I took a few things that have been in my act for years that I've been exploring on stage, and one of them is
hippies,
about the hippies from the 60s cleaning themselves up and taking over American public education.
Yes.
And that's basically what this is exploring here. The most dangerous thing you can do with a hippie is clean it up and put it into polite American society because within 20 minutes they have teaching credentials. I don't know how they do it. It's
and
magical,
tenure.
But yeah, and tenure. Then tenure is the next thing, and then it's the zombie apocalypse is upon us. It's just a different kind of zombie, and they're going after the brains of our children. So I wrote an ebook about it, and it just got published. Well, Amazon made it available last night. It was supposed to be ready today, but I'm doing the big Friday the 13th rollout today.
Very exciting. That is really cool, and I know it'll be hilarious and certainly not your typical conservative style of book because, well, you're not the typical style of conservative, so that's awesome.
It's like for the most part, there might be a couple of dirty words in it. I don't even remember, but for the most part, it's pretty clean and tame. But it is a little, it's me writing it, and it's available on Amazon today. You just search me, and if you don't have a Kindle, people always freak out about that. If you've got an iPhone, an Android phone, a laptop,
iPad,
a Mac, PC, and iPad, anything, you can download a Kindle Reader app for free and read any Kindle content you want on it.
Yeah, that's a very cool app.
What about BlackBerry?
No, BlackBerry.
BlackBerry. When I had a BlackBerry a couple years ago, they did have a Kindle app.
Woohoo! Just tell him. Yeah, you noticed that he said a couple years ago, though, producer Jason.
Well, I wanted to stay with BlackBerry because I was in love with the keyboard, like most BlackBerry people are.
Yes.
But they never got serious about having a browser on BlackBerry, so I had to leave.
Yes, exactly. Well, short bus over here, as Joe Dan likes to refer. Okay, so anyway, so the new book is definitely, people can Google your name. The book is called Don't Let the Hippies Shower, and they can find it.
The link is also available in my Twitter bio now.
Link available at Steven Cruiser.
Link straight to the book.
It's the PH Steven Cruiser, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, and Cruiser is K-R-U-I-S-E-R. Could you really make it any more confusing, Steven Cruiser, to spell your name? And anyway, or they can go to stevencruiser.com, I'm sure, as well. Now,
PH is the biblical way there, Gina, okay?
I was waiting for the name you were going to call me
with
right
a
there.
PH, that's the biblical way of spelling Steven. So
What's the biblical way of cruiser? Is that
Cruiser's just something I made up.
Well, I can't have you on the show without getting to somebody that I think does shower actually really regularly, but is also unorthodox in her approach to what she's doing, and that is the Miss America contestant. We talked about her a little earlier today. She's got tattoos. She shoots guns. This is not your father's Miss America contestant, and I just wanted to get your comment on that, and I figured you'd probably want to give it.
It's been a long-held thing. It's been something we've known on this side of the aisle for a long time that I don't think they know on the other side of the aisle, but you can be like a regular American person and still be glamorous and hot as hell.
Yeah.
Okay? You can be a gun-toting, just real American, and that's what's attractive. It's not this manufactured stuff. I'd go high def on her, and that has multiple meanings. I would definitely do a zoom in on high def on her. But that's, when you meet people like, you and I live in Southern California now, and we run into people who don't always hang around with conservatives. But when you go into go into hardcore places like in the entertainment industry, after they hang out with me for a while, they're surprised to find out you're like a human being. You're just an actual human being. And I think that's what people are stunned to find out right now. They go, well, here you got this Miss America contestant, and she's just a normal person, but she's hot.
Yeah, exactly.
And people expect all glamorous people to be fake, and people are always surprised when someone that does something that we like totes guns or does something a little worse. They're always surprised to find they're real people, they're attractive people, because people need to get out more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that should keep us all busy. That and the Alabama game. Are you going to root for Alabama?
I guess. I don't really. I'm a Pac-12 guy, so I don't pay much attention to what's going on down there.
All right. Well, this week, a lot happening in the news, and we should get to some of that because I know you've always got some insight. Do you think that Obama has taken us from a superpower? And if you do you think it is fixable, redeemable?
Well, militarily, we're still the undisputed king. It's that we don't use our military very well, where the problem comes in, where we will start a war but then not really fight it. I've been all over this world doing shows for the troops, and I've seen stuff that we've got on islands and places that you don't know, and I look around and I go, how do we ever lose one of these things?
Yeah.
And it's because we don't fight the wars. Well, he's definitely hurting our credibility. I think the only thing that's keeping it from going completely off the cliff is the fact that so many people on both the right and the left are going, whoa, Chief, relax a little here.
Exactly.
And are against him. I mean, I did a 30-minute interview on a progressive radio show the other day, and we spent the entire time agreeing with each other about the way he's handling this.
Mm. Yeah, well, and that is what I think is fascinating. I mean, you really, you and I have traveled around the country, and we've met a lot of these occupiers and gone out in the middle of their little crowds and whatever, and I honestly think if you had an occupier and a Tea Party on this issue, we'd all be standing right there together mostly.
Well, you had Medea Benjamin from Code Pink the other day saying that she would be open to holding some protests with some Tea Party groups.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
That's how far afield the president has wandered with this one. He might have Nancy Pelosi in his corner. He might have John McCain. He might have a few people on the Hill in his corner. But by and large, the real Americans at the moment on both sides of the aisle are not on board with this.
Yeah, the fact that those people are who's in Atlanta, that I hope that illustrates for people the way politics really works, because I remember so well, the Democrat in the Missouri House when my husband served there in the Senate. I remember the leadership and the Democrats and the Republicans, they would do exactly what they wanted to do every time, and then they'd blame, extraordinary circumstances, or they'd let someone take a pass on a vote while that person was not really working
to pass the bill. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, literally the person would get to vote the way they needed to for their district or act the way they needed to, while that person did absolutely nothing, and everyone behind the scenes knew that person wasn't even trying to pass the bill. He just wanted to look like he was trying to pass the bill, and leadership would give him a pass because he was a friend of leadership. That's the way that works. That's the way politics has always worked. This is what those of us who have been involved in the Tea Party have been trying to point out forever. It is not about Republican and Democrat. It's about elitism versus we the people.
It's about the political class, yes.
Yes.
It's not, I mean, if you want to go class warfare, you don't break it down economically, you break it down by political power. And you talk about the political class and the way they exercise their will. And, you know, there are a lot of people on the left that will blame that on money, but that's not really all it is. It's about power and longevity, which is one of the reasons you can't leave someone in Washington for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a big to-do yesterday when Katrina Pearson's decided to challenge Pete Sessions and everybody and all the mainstream Republican consultant class were getting mad at the grassroots and back and forth. And I told one of my more mainstream consultant friends, I said, I don't care how solid anyone is in D.C. I'm okay for challenging anyone who's been there more than 10 years in a primary. Anyone.
And it gets to where at least it will hold them a little accountable. I know it's very, very difficult to beat an incumbent, and conservatives never know what to do in those situations. But at least it does tell that person they're not going to get a free ride over and over again as they have for so long. And I really do think if there was ever a moment in recent history in America that we could make some of these changes, it would be now.
Yeah, I hope. And then one of the things you mentioned earlier about people, doing a sham vote just for political cover, that's done just so they can extend their careers there. And when you don't give them the longevity option, then they stop doing things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stephen Cruiser, folks want to find your book, StephenCruiser.com, or on Twitter. He is the Twitter maestro, Stephen Cruiser is his handle on Twitter. The book, Don't Let the Hippies Shower. It's so nice of you. I'm so nice of this professor, this Arabic professor here in UCSD, to illustrate your book for you today by leaving Israel literally off the map that he handed out to his students in his language class. Have you thanked him?
Yeah, no, not yet. I'll drive down. I'll drive down and make sure I do.
Well, join me for fish tacos when you come down, because we'd love to have you.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, Stephen Cruiser, don't let the hippies shower. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Yes, thank you. Take care.
All right, all the best. Coming up, I'm going to talk to you about what
guns and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hi, this is Mark Stein, author of After America, and even in the midst of total societal collapse, you don't want to miss the Dr. Gina Show. She's great.
this story, so unbelievable, but yet not so unbelievable. when my family and I, my husband and I had talked for years privately about adopting a child with Down syndrome. And people would come up to me with private comments, and part of me hesitates to say this because I don't ever want my friends or close personal confidants to feel like they can't say to me what they feel like is the truth. And I appreciate those who were, when my husband and I announced we were going to adopt a child with Down syndrome, I appreciate those who were legitimately concerned about my family. But in my heart of hearts, I believe there's no possible way they could be educated on people with Down syndrome or on families who have members with a disability and still have said the things they said. And some of them were very painful. Friendships were ended over this. I mean, absolutely ended. Family relationships were forever strained over this. First of all, when a family member of yours makes a decision to do something like an adoption, just let me get one thing out of the way really clearly. This isn't something they haven't thought about. So the very assumption that my husband and I hadn't given this enough thought, when we had been thinking about this since we worked at Camp Wonderland in college, in our undergrad.
Seriously, people came up to you and said,
I don't think
have you really thought about this?
Yeah. Do you understand that these people have problems? And some of the comments were so, I had one mother of a friend of mine with Down syndrome who was in our wedding, Tom Pullman, an amazing man with an amazing mom who raised him essentially alone. And he's one of, he was, honestly, Tom was really the person that convinced me that I wanted to adopt a child with Down syndrome. He was that amazing. He was in our wedding. He carried the Bible for us, and we loved him. And he was one of our first inspirations. He and Sharon and Gordon were our friends that were in our wedding that had Down syndrome, and they all inspired us and continue to inspire us. His mother came up to me, and I don't think she'd mind me saying, I hope you realize what you're doing. And she did cause me to think. She caused me to go, wow, do I completely understand what the impact will be, the lifetime of a commitment of adopting a child with special needs that are essentially unknown, because the spectrum of difficulties experienced by people with Down syndrome is unknown. You don't know any more than you know when you bear a child what kind of trouble they're going to be. And they all bring trouble. Let's get that out of the way. I don't care how good you are as parents, you're not going to avoid trouble, character flaws in your children.
Oh, no. If I had kids, they'd be perfect.
If you had kids, the whole world would be in trouble, Jason. But so my point is that we knew that, but we also knew that more than 90% of people with Down syndrome are aborted. And we wanted to give a chance at life to a child who wasn't otherwise probably going to have a chance at life. And I think, if I'm completely honest, the other thing we wanted to do was say to the world, look at the value in this life. We wanted to raise up a child, whatever his abilities were, that could say something really special to the world about the abilities of these people. And I think the other selfish reason we wanted to adopt him is because I knew people who had siblings with special needs. Most people I know don't have siblings with special needs. But I noticed some depth of character in the siblings of those with special needs. Not necessarily Down syndrome, but I just noticed there was a depth of character there. And I don't know why it is that God blesses and endows those siblings of children with special needs with something really special about them. But he does. It's just obvious to me. Producer Jason, you're a great example of that. your beautiful sister you lost right before you started working for me, gave you a depth of character that I saw immediately that set you apart from other people that applied to work for me. That was her gift to you. I never thought about it like that. Now you're going to cry. Me too. But there is something really special about children who have a member in their family who has a special need. And I don't know why that is. It just is. I wanted that for my children. Some of the comments I had when we decided to adopt him, one person that I thought was one of my best friends said to me, have you thought about what that'll do to your family portraits?
Are you kidding me?
Oh, I never got over that. Never got over that. And you know what that does? You know what pictures of Samuel do for my family portrait? He is the most beautiful child with the biggest smile in our family. I mean, he's a beautiful child. He has done nothing but enhance our family portraits, in my opinion. But I didn't know that when I adopted him blindly. I had no idea what he was going to look like. He happens to be stunningly beautiful. I think he's model material. Maybe that's just the mom in me.
Yeah, Sammy's a stud. It's official.
But that was one comment. I had other comments. You know, most of the comments had to do with, do you realize that you are burdening your children for the rest of their lives? The word burden. I don't know, but I don't think my children would think of it that way. But there were enough negative comments as we got close to the date that we were going to actually adopt him. There were enough negative comments from the outside world that John and I decided to have a family meeting, as we'll do a lot when we're facing really tough family decisions or trials. We decided to have a family meeting, and we called all of our children together. And they were young, I'll give you that. And we said, these are the things other people are saying. And we don't want to cause you any undue pain in your life. So we want to get your thoughts on what they're saying before we go through with the final paperwork that we have to do to adopt this unknown child with Down syndrome. And our kids' answers were the most beautiful, the most God-inspired answers I've ever heard. They knew. See, kids, the simplicity of faith in a child should be what all of us aspire to. They knew. They were unafraid. None of those comments had any impact, even though some of them were from close family members and very close friends of ours. No impact other than just a recommitment and a reconviction that adopting a child with Down syndrome was precisely the right thing to do. For the purposes of ignorance like this. There was a group of children with Down syndrome who wanted to celebrate the end of their school year by going to a hotel in Spain called the Hotel Cabo Gata Plaza Suites. The hotel said it would not board the children because these kinds of people, quote unquote, might annoy other guests. Now, following up on this, management at the hotel has apologized for the incident, saying it was a misunderstanding, saying that in 35 years of business, they've never refused access to guests with Down syndrome, and say they have been, and always will be very welcome. Doesn't take away the fact that they were worried about these kinds of people annoying other guests. It tells me right there the ignorance is on the part of the management. Have you ever been around a person with Down syndrome and been annoyed? I mean, they are so much less annoying to me than people without Down syndrome, statistically speaking. And that is exactly the kind of attitude. I'm not one of these politically correct people that says you can't call them retarded. The minutia in this whole advocacy, to me, is distracting from the point that there is a public stigma that I can speak to, that I know because I am a mother who chose to have a child with Down syndrome. So I can speak to that stigma. While everybody says, oh, how sweet, before you've actually made the decision, the things they say to you aren't so sweet. and aren't so supportive. And the things they say behind your back aren't so sweet and aren't so supportive. They question your motives. They question your sanity. And this is exactly what's wrong, and this is exactly why 9 out of 10 single women or women who face the option of giving life or choosing death for their baby choose death. 9 out of 10. What a tragedy and what a loss for the families who could have had that extra joy that comes in that one little extra chromosome. What a tragedy.
Hi, this is Joe Dane Gorman of Intellectual Frog Legs. Ain't no liberals say I have every phobia out there. They say I'm a homophobe, an Islamophobe, even a Michelle Obama-phobe. Well, actually, I am kind of scared of her. So, with all these fruitcake phobias, I'm bound to be on my last leg. So you probably ought to hurry on over to intellectualfroglegs.com. See what Chuck Woolery's calling the best new media he's seen. That's intellectualfroglegs.com.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best t-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com. docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who would like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was founded over 35 years ago. Gun Owners of America is here for only 2 reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. Gun Owners of America has been called the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Join today at gunowners.org.
Do you support Obama's universal background check? This is Dr. Gina. I want you to go to gunowners.org right now and answer that important survey question. Gun Owners is the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, according to Ron Paul, and many others are finding the value of joining an organization like Gun Owners of America, who's been there and will be there with a no-compromise attitude. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org.
You're a troublemaker, troublemaker. You ain't nothing but a troublemaker, girl.
This is Andrew Breitbart of Breitbart.com and Big Government. Troublemaker, just like my longtime friend, Dr. Gina, Tea Party Patriot. You're listening to The Dr. Gina Show.
Oh, troublemaker, yeah, that's your middle name.
My next guest is going to talk to us about the deadly consequences of pushing women into combat. Now, I've talked about this issue many times before, but the reason I wanted to have him on is because he's got some data to back. And you know how hard it is to get data on something like this? You are knocking down walls to try and get this kind of data, because all of the science is going to be against you, and because they kind of stack the books, if you will. And he's here to tell us about it right now. Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, the author of Deadly Consequences: How Cowards Are Pushing Women into Combat. I love the title of the book, and I love the subtitle of the book. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
May I just call you Colonel?
Or Bob, one or the other.
Okay. It is appropriate, though, if it's Lieutenant Colonel, still to refer to you as Colonel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I thought so. All right, so I do want to talk to you about this because for a long time I've had a strong inclination that this is wrong. And now that I have a daughter who's almost old enough to go into the draft, the first question off the top of my head is, could she be drafted?
Well, yes, given the Obama administration's decision in January to remove the policy and to remove all exemptions for women, what this will communicate to the Supreme Court, and there are cases that are being prepared now, is that now that we have no longer statutory reasons why women can't serve in direct ground combat or any combat, and they've removed the policy exemptions. The Supreme Court's going to move ahead, and they're going to say, selective service, you have to now include women in your conscription. Now, are we going to have to go to a draft to fill the military? Well, if you look at two ingredients, we're doing a radical downsizing of the military now because of the $17 trillion debt that we have. We're cutting hundreds of thousands of people. We're cutting back on weapon systems. So we're really beginning to gut of the world-class military. That's going to have a consequence. The other part is the world. The threats, if you look at the Middle East, Northern Africa, it's a tinderbox. You look at what China's doing. China for the last 30 years, double-digit increases in defense spending. It has a blue water navy, a sophisticated air force, a space program. Russia is reemerging very seriously. There are threats all over the globe. Mm-hmm. Do we need more or less? And those are the questions. So when you bring those three ingredients together, Dr. Gina, you have to ask, at what point in the not-so-distant future are we going to have to field a force that is going to be large enough to handle many crises that are critical to our national interest? Mm-hmm. And are we going to be able to afford the all-volunteer force that we currently have? And I think the answer is no to the all-volunteer force, just because it costs us $150 billion alone for wages right now, and that cost is increasing radically. So we are downsizing, and we're going to have a smaller force, we're going to have a crisis, and we're going to have to bring in people through conscription through the draft, and it will include our young daughters, and they will be forced into any position the military sees fit.
And, it's interesting you say that, because I also talk a lot on this show, and I don't want to digress too far, but the benefits that now are offered to our military, honestly, I believe in some ways are creating a further entitlement mentality. I've talked to folks who, there's so many things. It's no wonder it's so expensive. And I think you're absolutely right. It's going to continue to be expensive as more entitlements are expected. And then we're just not going to have the money to keep up. So a draft becomes then obviously something that would have to take place. Now, obviously, men and women have different physical abilities, and you can't say that women can complete these tests for combat the same way men do. Why don't we just admit that? And what happens so that women are passing these combat tests?
Well, they'll gender norm. In other words, they'll say equal effort, equal results, which isn't true. If I have to, as a man at 19 years old, do 25 push-ups or 50 push-ups or whatever, a woman would only have to do about 40 or 50% of that, just because of upper body strength. So that's essentially what happens. But when we look at the science, and I go into the science with some great MDs, one which was an admiral that was the advisors to the chief of naval operations and others, we look. First of all, we explain what the steroid testosterone does to men. Men have 10 times as much as women. What does that mean? That means that they have a far more upper and lower body strength. They have the same number of muscle fibers, but they're much larger. There's about 37 pounds more of muscle lean in a man on the average than there is in a woman. Women are not little men, and that's a misconstrued idea for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. The cardiovascular system, their hearts, their lungs in men, because of testosterone, are much larger. Their bones are stronger, and of course, anatomically, we're different in terms of how we carry loads and what loads we carry. Then you look at the psychology, and the science is replete in psychology. All this is government-funded science that has been done for decades. You look at who is less fearful, who takes more risk, and who is more aggressive in the 18 to 24-year group, which is the prime target for recruiting to the armed forces, and it's men. Unfortunately, who commits the murders in this country, who commits the robberies, who commits all these crimes, it's because, to a certain degree, there's a hormonal component here. When we in the military want to train people to smash heads and kill people and wrestle, people to the ground and cut their throats, which is not a pleasant thing to do, who are you going to choose? You're going to choose the strongest, the meanest, the most aggressive people you can. That's why, as an infantryman, and I've served in 4 infantry divisions on 3 continents, that's why we choose young men, and we train them as hard as we possibly can so that they're ready. I use the analogy, Dr. Gina, that let's say we have the Arkansas Razorback football team, and the president there says, I don't care what the rest of schools do. I'm going to put 3 women from the campus in every one of the lineups, and we're going to play these, Kansas State, we're going to play LSU and so forth. What do you think's the outcome? Of course they're going to lose every game because the other teams are not going to put, young women in those situations because that's where brawn, that's where aggressiveness, and, these young men that we recruit for the football team are like that. Well, that's the same thing with the combatants. We want tough, mean killers to a certain degree.
And what are the practical implications? Because what I always picture, when you're talking about combat, you're talking about front lines, you're talking about body down, you're talking about throwing that guy over your shoulder and carrying him or leaving him behind. What is a woman going to do in that situation where she weighs 115 pounds and she's trying to sling a guy over her shoulder who weighs 200 pounds? How is that going to work from a practical standpoint?
Well, it won't. And by the way, that 200-pound man has body armor, a weapon, and other things. So he's probably more like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
So in the book, I go through examples of what the fight is like, and not so long ago in 2004 in Najaf and then Fallujah, I talk about a number of Vietnam engagements. It's absolutely terrifying. It was terrifying to write and terrifying to read. When you think about what it took to do this, the same thing in Korea and other battles through history. We have those ahead. I don't want to think about it, but we have to be prepared for the worst case. And young women, according to pilots, I talked to a bunch of Army pilots, and they said, look, when I'm in the cockpit and I go down, I need a co-pilot that if he or she is, well enough, they can come and pull my body out of there away from the aircraft before it explodes. And he said, in the unit where they fly, they had young women, and they just physically could not do that job. And then not only would they have to carry them away from the aircraft, they'd have to defend them, if they were under attack. So I'm talking more about the front lines, but these people are saying it's something that we should not ignore.
Wow. Well, and without even, and we don't have a lot of time left, but without even thinking about it, the sex crimes have got to be a huge issue.
Well, it is. Who thinks, really, when you put in a hyper-masculine organization young women, all of a sudden that we're going to be, we're not going to have any problems. We have a terrible problem right
already.
now. The Pentagon has said that.
Yeah.
So who in their right mind is suggesting that in this hyper-masculine environment, which we have to have because they have to be killers, that all of a sudden we're going to have no sex problems? Goodness, it's hard to comprehend that sort of thinking.
It really is. It's the definition of ignorance to ignore the differences that it seems so easily observable. Anyway, I do so much appreciate what you do. The book, Deadly Consequences, How Cowards Are Pushing Women into Combat. Thank you for being with us, Colonel McGinnis.
Well, thank you,
God,
Dr. Jean.
guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry, handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com. docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
You ain't nothing but a troublemaker, girl.
This is Andrew Breitbart of Breitbart.com and Big Government. Troublemaker, just like my longtime friend, Dr. Gina, Tea Party Patriot. You're listening to The Dr. Gina Show.
Oh, troublemaker, yeah, that's your middle name. Oh, I know you know it, but you're stuck in my brain. Troublemaker.
Well, our go-to guy for what Hollywood is up to, Newsmax Hollywood reporter and legal analyst James Herson is in the house. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show, James Herson.
Hello there, Dr. Gina. How are you? Boy, it was great to hear Andy Breitbart's voice on the segment coming in. That's so sweet.
Isn't that nice to get to hear his voice on that promo? I appreciate you appreciating that. A lot still going on in Hollywood, and of course Andrew always did have a lot to say about what was going on in Hollywood, and you still have a lot to say about it. Kanye West and Beyonce, talk to us about where their priorities are.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people, are probably sick of hearing Kanye and Beyonce, but Kanye being oversaturated, has a new album out, is constantly being photographed with his baby mama, Kim Kardashian, and he appears on the reality shows. But one of the things that really bothers me is Kanye has been marketing his new album, which has song titles like New Slaves, using civil rights. And here he goes, along with Beyonce, and performs in Kazakhstan for a relative of the dictator. And I think it's proper to call this guy a dictator of Kazakhstan. His official title is President for Life. I think we call that a dictator. And this guy jails, if journalists write things he doesn't like, he puts them in jail. He tortures his opposition. He's from the same mold as Fidel Castro, who just a couple of months ago was able to use, Kanye, Beyonce and Jay-Z, who went vacationing in Cuba, so the Castro brothers could use them as useful idiots and have, these photo ops of Beyonce and Jay-Z partying and enjoying this delightful Potemkin village that was set up in Havana. So it's a combination of hypocrisy and this celebrity power that celebrities possess, using it irresponsibly. In this case, of course, we have a report that indicates that Kanye West, for a very short performance for this dictator's grandson, was paid $3 million. And that's a lot of money, I understand. But Sting turned down a similar gig just a couple of years ago because of the human rights violations that take place here. And both Kanye and Beyonce ought to give back their money and apologize. This is shameful that they would go, and it's not that different. Syria's in the news right now.
Right.
As if they played a concert in Syria for a relative of, Bashar Assad. This guy, his name is Nazir Bayev, and it's, his country. A lot of people don't realize Kazakhstan, Borat made fun of it, but it's a very strategic country. It borders China, it borders Russia, it has a tremendous amount of energy resources. It is the largest producer of uranium in the world, and this Nazir Bayev, who's been accused of corruption, has been able to become a billionaire, as many dictators do, by cozying up with the energy companies in Kazakhstan. And so it's just another example of celebrity hypocrisy.
Well, it really is, because as we're watching all of this unfold in Syria, and of course we all remember, really basically any time any other president ever said they were going to war. Hollywood would come out in droves and say what a hawk they were and how they were all about really killing children and whatever. Where are they right now? I'm not hearing a peep out of Hollywood.
Gina, a great point. I mean, I know I work with people in Hollywood, and a lot of them are big-name people, and they've been whispering things to me over the last few weeks. They're stunned. They're absolutely in stunned disbelief that their hero, this president, two issues that have them stunned. One is the NSA surveillance, which we recently heard, Oliver Stone refer to the President of the United States as a reptile that crawls on the ground, called him a snake, twice, in front of shocked reporters in Tokyo. And a lot of people have spoken out, John Cusack, Matt Damon, even Michael Moore on the NSA surveillance. But you're right, the silence is deafening when it comes to this push for war, and the anti-war left is muted. They're out there, but there's no comparison to the way they were out there with George W. Bush. It could be that Hollywood is waiting to see what's going to happen with this congressional authorization, if, there's really shots fired. I think some on the left are going to be forced to come out. The problem is when they do, even like the New York Times, after the NSA surveillance revelations were published, said that the Obama administration has lost all credibility. That was the New York Times, and Michael Moore tweeted his agreement with that statement, but nobody covered it. It wasn't anywhere. And for me, Michael Moore, I mean, he loves to get press, but if he criticizes Obama, he can't get any. And Oliver Stone's statement was covered a bit, but I think, where's Cindy Sheehan? Where
us informed of what is trending for those who